This crisis has forced millions of Canadians off the job, meanwhile, and some businesses to permanently close their doors. But there are those who should be working overtime, according to my next guest. You know him as the co-founder of BlackBerry, Jim Balsillie. He says Canada's innovators should be working around the clock to lead Canada's recovery from this crisis. He delivered that message to a committee of MPs studying what the recovery should look like. Jim Balsillie is now the chair of the Canadian Council of Innovators. He joins us from Waterloo in Ontario. Hi, Mr. Balsillie. Good to have you back on the program.
Pleasure to be with you, Vassy.
I have a few questions for you about what you said to committee earlier today, but I wanted to start off with sort of a bird's eye view or 20,000-foot view from you. How big of an impact has the pandemic had, do you think, on the economy?
Oh, I think it's been really a terrible, terrible, terrible hit, and it's terribly tragic, both economically and health-wise, and I think it's a very sad event, and I hope that we as a country, economically, non-economically, can really come out of this terrible, terrible hit.
When it comes to coming out of it, what are the differences between coming out of this type of recession, depression, whatever you want to call it, hit to the economy versus ones in the past? How do you think it will be different?
Well, the most profound difference is in the 2008 financial crisis was that Canada was very fortunate to be carried by $100 Alberta oil that needed to supply voracious Chinese demand and Asian demand. That's not there now. So really the only place on the chessboard for us to go is to participate much more substantially in the ideas economy of intangibles and create the policy structures that will support us prospering in this area that, quite frankly, we've lagged for 25 years.
So if you were to identify in layman's terms some sort of policy that could be put forward by the government that would help address the vacuum that you're arguing exists, what would you like to see?
The most important things would be things like a data strategy, an IP strategy, an innovation core for the smart people that have had their jobs in the brain drain stopped, strategic procurement. There's a number of things we could do. I would really say we should have done them 20 years ago, but the old expression, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best time is now.
Do you have any optimism? Are you at all encouraged by things that you've heard so far? What do you think, I guess, there is a chance that the mistakes of 20 years ago are rectified now?
Well, what happens in a crisis is it really exposes your vulnerabilities and it really focuses your priorities. So that's what I mean by kind of is the ironic opportunity of this, because it's shocking us so severely when we see that we're not in charge of our value chains and our supply chains, when we see that so many of our businesses are really not that as strong as we'd like them to be. So hopefully, and with the industry testimony, that this is an awakening and people are starting to realize the world is rivalrous, and it's been rivalrous in the ideas economy. We have an orthodoxy problem in Canada. We bought the neoliberal laissez-faire thing all the way, which applies in the tangible economy to some extent, but the intangibles economy is a hands-on. It's the opposite, and we never developed that updated toolkit for the 25 years ago, and we've missed substantially that shift. So if this wakes us up, then it's a real opportunity for Canada.
That's an interesting way to frame it, and I'm wondering if you think your argument might be buoyed by what we've witnessed over the last 2 months and the anti-laissez-faire expectation of governments of all levels.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because a lot of them, it's either laissez-faire or you're communist. And it was a weird framing that actually didn't reflect in the world. And that's why I've said Canada has such a superficial discourse in intangibles, that the laissez-faire economy of getting rid of tariffs and letting supply chains go, there's a lot of merit for that in efficiency. But the ideas economy is pure hands-on because it's based on a principle called legal restriction. So what I saw around the world is all these governments were working with the private sector to structure their ideas economy and prosper. And the intangibles as a percentage of Canada's economy is the same now as it was 20 years ago, while the rest of the world has soared. And it's simply been outdated policy thinking because we didn't realize that one part of it's hands-off and the other part of it's very technically hands-on. And we, for some reason, didn't update our thinking. So maybe this will shock us into updating our thinking because of the just laid bare the realities of the world in this pandemic.
What do you think impacted political will in the past, that the exact scenario that you just described?
Well, we were sold a bill of goods that everything's, laissez-faire, hands-on, survival of the fittest. And meanwhile, and it allowed people to not have to be technically up to date. And we were sold that by a lot of foreign influences. We have overly dominant policy discourse by foreign tech and foreign branch plant interests in this Canada. So, sold what's good for them is good for us. And it allowed people to be lazy on their thinking and not update it and not have to work hard and swing hard on these things. So, and it never was like that. And we kept faltering in innovation and making up, resource curse, no fire in the belly. We had an absence of the digital policy infrastructure that every other country was building. We didn't build it. And this is laying it bare. 3M has 7,000 patents with the word mask in it. Like they don't just take pulp and put a form on it. They own the ideas. And this is in absolutely every sector that's out there. And we have to get in there and actually have strategies and policies and capability for it. And it's hard for us to realize, but I've seen the enemy, and the enemy is us. We failed to have attuned policies to the nature of the economy, and we paid dearly for it. We got covered by it because of the price of oil and other commodities, but that won't save us this time. So it's time for us to take charge and plan and navigate the future for our country and our economy.
Okay, I have to leave it there. I'm out of time, but thank you for your time, Mr. Balsillie. Pleasure to have you back.
The pleasure's all mine.